All right, so welcome to TriEmbed, January 16, 2023. Welcome. We got not a big group, but some new faces, which is always good to see. Any announcements? Things going on? Hamfests? Maker meetups? Not much going on.
Yeah, I don't know of anything offhand.
I don't either. There's usually Rars Fest in April, I think. So
Yeah,
I
there
haven't.
isn't too much this time of the year.
Yeah, I haven't seen any announcements on that. I'm sure
And
it'll.
it's, what's his name? I can't remember his name. It's in Durham. He's the one that always seems to know everything about
Scott.
what's happening.
Yeah, Scott Hall.
Scott. Yeah, there we go.
Yep. All right. Well, let's see. I gotta share my screen here.
Just to let everybody know, I do the recording and I edit it quite a bit usually before I publish it on YouTube. And I generally will publish to the list what the URL is to the meeting.
And I put that on the meeting archives on the website, so you should be able to get to them in the future.
Right, that works.
All right. So one of the things that we do at each meeting is I present a problem of the month, and we spend a little time brainstorming on possible solutions. So tonight, so there are these annoying little approximately 1-inch spheres that fall out of sweet gum trees, and there are hundreds or thousands of them in my driveway, in my yard, and it's no fun to walk barefoot on those.
Certainly not.
So I've been thinking about building a robot that would go around and pick them up. And I have a pretty good idea of how I would put a camera on a robot and drive it around and approach these guys. But then I have to pick it up somehow and
Put them in a container.
Put them in a container and take the container somewhere and dump it. Or, I don't think I want to go out and pick up one at a time. And so there are some commercial solutions for people to do this task manually. But the problem this month is, how might you put this onto a robot to pick these things up? Previous. And so this is kind of the robot's view on my driveway of what a monkey ball looks like.
So the first problem, other than the basic maneuvering of the robot itself, is you have to know what it is you want to pick up.
Okay.
Capiche?
Yeah.
So,
I think that a neural net that recognizes bikes and cats and computers and whatnot could be converted to one that would recognize the difference between monkey balls and rocks.
Right. You'd have to train it, right?
Yeah, you would have to train it. But assume that's there. Assume that the robot can drive up to that point, and get the monkey ball in the field of view at a known location relative to the robot. Now, how do we pick it up?
How do we actually physically pick it up? So
Now the pickup is you're looking at picking them up on the driveway, right? Not on the grass or the lawn.
Well, I'd like to do it on the lawn as well, probably.
Okay.
But if you have a good solution for the driveway, I'm willing to listen to that.
I don't know what comes to mind right now. I think of a brush concept type D. I know that could be rotating, just pushes it into a container that you fill, and
Okay.
the plate follows. It's just on the ground that you push. It's just like a tractor with what do I mean, a front load. You see, you get the idea there.
Yeah, so it's like a street sweeper that sweeps up everything, right?
Right, exactly.
yeah,
Non-discriminative.
That's true.
discriminatory.
So
Yeah.
you're talking about like just instead of pinching it or stabbing it, just knock it into a container.
It's on the driveway. I want to get it onto the robot. So you mentioned a pincher or a stabber.
Pinch, stab, brush, knock, the action things you'd want to do to get it into a container. Which would be easier to, I'm thinking if you pinch it or stab it, then you got to figure out how to unpinch it or unstab it. But if you just knock it into a container, you don't have that to deal with. That's just off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of issues. So depends on, so if the brush is turning, so the top of so let's you have a cylinder type brush that's turning
Mhm.
like this,
Right.
okay, and the top of the brush is turning away from the robot, which means that the bottom of the brush is going to be pushing this stuff towards the robot. Well, if it had like a chute on the bottom, it could catch that. This would work, but only until the weight of the amount of crap that you've got keeps any more from coming in because it can't push it up into the cylinder anymore. So there may need to be a way, maybe suction or something like that, air that sucks in at the same time that the brush is moving, that actually causes turbulence within a chamber, but pushes everything up into that chamber. Which actually led me into another idea: is you could eliminate the brush if you just had a powerful enough suction. Just as you get up to it,
Just need
suck
a
it in.
big can of compressed vacuum, right?
Well, yeah, well,
That's a
not. I mean, you could do it with like a squirrel fan, is what I'm thinking. You could create the
A
suction,
vacuum cleaner, right?
Yeah.
So you attach a vacuum cleaner onto the
essentially.
robot. Yep.
This idea maybe sucks, but don't,
With a cyclonic separator.
Yeah, vacuum cleaner, I guess, would be a way to suck it from the ground, right?
Okay.
But once again, it's not going to be very discriminatory.
I don't know. You can turn the vacuum cleaner on and off. You can maneuver the nozzle to right over the monkey ball and turn the vacuum on, and when it disappears, you turn it off.
That would be using, you'd have to use some sort of AI, the neural net, as you were talking about, to do something like that. But
I worked on long time ago on tomato harvesting machines. What they have essentially, they pick up the tomatoes, they pick up everything, and then they fall. And as they fall, there's an eye, which is just at the time was only using 3 infrared channels, I guess. And then we use that information, RGB and infrared, I think, and we use that information to just push the bad one, basically, which would, in this case, would have been anything that's not red was bad. It could be a green tomato, or it could be soil. And you can do that with mechanical levers or just blowing air, right? That's another approach. That's also used to lentils, for example. In the old days, you would buy lentils, there would be pieces of stones left. Nowadays, it doesn't happen. They have X-ray machines, and they blow the bad particles out as they fall through a conveyor, basically. So same approach could be used to maybe you pick up everything and then you just send back all the whatever you don't want to pick. So.
I mean, maybe I want a clean driveway, but
Okay. Then you pick up everything. Right?
Yeah, well, that's also going to change the size of the bin that this is all going to collect in, right? Because you could have, for example, a lot more leaves than you do these little thingies you're
yeah.
picking up.
Yeah. They tend to fall at different times of the year, but
Yeah, they are annoying trees. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Any other ideas?
I was thinking if those things are kind of like gears, only they instead of gears they have little prongs in here, and just keep scooping them and flipping them around a enclosure, like a spiral or whatever, clogged at the bottom, but have it the space where it could be flexible, where if anything large got in, it would just kick it over. But the whole idea would be simple, like a free floating gear, those little monkey balls, whatever, would just engage in the rotating part and just flip it into the bin. I don't know. That was more mechanical than.
No, that's fine. So there's some kind of a cover that
Cover.
the ball fits between the gear and the
Yeah.
cover, and it kind of rolls up and kicks out the back. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
You've also got to think about which method is going to be more efficient. In other words, which one is going to leave the least amount of stuff that it thinks it picked up but didn't actually do it.
Say, what do you mean by that?
Well, so let's say you tried to suck some stuff in using the method I was talking about, but one of these monkey balls hits the edge and then bounces away from the chute. So
Okay.
it's not actually going in, but it bounces into an area that you've already done, and consequently it's not going to go back there.
Okay.
You
I mean,
know, and the
if
same
it's like
thing.
if it's like a Roomba, right? It just bounces around randomly.
Right.
Depends on what version of Roomba you have, but
Right. Yeah, we have one here, which is going to start up in 40 minutes. 8 o'clock every night, my wife has it set to run.
In general, there's no problem finding these things because they're everywhere.
Yeah. Well,
And if you pick them up, they don't end up crushed down into the dirt, right? And so it's more difficult to pick ones up that have been there for 6 months or a year and are pounded down into the soil, as opposed to the fresh ones that are laying up on top of the grass and
right, or the driveway.
Yeah.
You got a long driveway, don't you?
No, not particularly. Nothing like Pete's.
Yeah, I've never seen Pete's driveway, but your mailbox is quite away from the house, isn't it?
It's probably 80 feet, 90 feet. So it's not.
Because you were talking about having something on the mailbox to let you know when the mail came.
Yeah.
I just look out my window.
I
can hear the mail truck.
Yeah, I hear it. I'm on a corner lot, so I hear it drive by.
Me too. I'm
on the one street, and then they go do some stuff, and then it drives by on the other street, and both of those are false positives. Right? And then they come back up the those two streets, and that's when they actually do the delivery. So if you just hear them, you don't know which of the
Yeah. In your
four
case,
trips
that's
it is.
true.
Yeah, I
You
hear
wanna-
him coming down one street, and I turn on my Nest and look on my iPhone, and I can see him pulling up to the mailbox.
Yeah.
He has a bad muffler, so it's easy to track him.
Yeah. I just looked that way through my window. I could see him coming right to the mailbox. But I live in a cul-de-sac, or just at the beginning of the cul-de-sac. So I'm only going to hear him go make the loop. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what I hear. He's close.
Yep. Right. Any other ideas about picking up monkey balls?
Where did they ever come up with that name?
I don't know
Well,
where
those things are sticky, so I guess if you had some, when you first showed that picture of that thing, I was thinking about the, um, what do you call the sticky stuff that sticks together?
Velcro.
Velcro, yeah.
Yeah, they
Well,
look like
like
the hooks.
if you had
Just
like a Velcro thing, and then you just slam it or somehow to eject it off the Velcro type or something similar into a bin. I don't know that, you know, because those things, they got to be a little bit sticky with all those prongs on them.
yeah, I think that would work. Then the question is, how do you unstick them?
Yeah, how do
Yeah,
you unstick them? Yeah,
that would be the
Yeah,
big problem.
yeah, that would.
how do you comb it out? So you want them to attach to the fluff or whatever, but
Yeah,
you want them to.
Yeah, if you have a comb that can go intersect with whatever leaves them, I think that
yeah.
would work.
Comb it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've wondered if a like a thick nap paint roller would pick them up. So you just have the robot roll the
yeah.
paint roller around the
Just
yard
have a
and
blade across the front, just scrape them as it rolled off.
comb it up off the top of the
Yeah,
roller.
that could work. Are you gonna make one of these things, or?
It's
Or
on my list, but I've got so many things on my list that I never get around to. So
Yeah, he
Yeah, that
does
would be
these. He
silly.
doesn't always make them, but he does make some of them.
I do make some of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any other ideas?
Yeah, there aren't too many options for this one.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay. I want to avoid a robot arm, right? You could mount an arm on the robot that would go and
Yeah,
pick
that
them up,
means
and
picking it up one at a time.
well, that's okay. It can run, like your Roomba.
Right.
It can run remotely, autonomously, and if you keep up with it,
Oh, so the other thing is you're going to have some sort of sensor in the bin that detects the level,
yeah. So you know when to go
so you
empty it.
know when to go dump it.
Yep.
And then you got to know where you're going to go dump it also. So, and then you have to come back and reposition at the place that you decided to do
No,
it.
you can reposition anywhere.
Yeah,
You just start searching again.
yeah,
But
Yeah,
that's
something
true.
like that was not magnetic, not metal. How would you know the level on something like that? I'm thinking,
You could just shoot an LED light across
oh
one
yeah,
side to the other
yeah, lightning.
and sense it, or not an LED so much as an infrared LED.
Infrared, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's a good idea. That would work.
you could have a plate that goes down into the
Oh yeah,
bin periodically and measures
Crushes them.
how far it went down. Yeah, like a compaction.
yeah, yeah.
Measures how far it went down. You
Just a
could,
regular mechanical switch on a flapper.
Yeah.
Or something.
So the other problem with compacting is it makes it harder to dump later.
probably, yep. You don't want to press it down. If you're just trying to find the level, you don't have much force in your compaction.
You know what you can do
What?
is put in. If you have a bin that that sits on some springs that'll move, you can shake the thing and get stuff to settle, so that you're not dumping so one side, let's say, gets a lot, but the other side's got almost nothing in it. It's going to say it's full, right? If you, regardless of the method you use. So you might want to be able to shake it to make it all settle.
Well, Carl, if you did the springs and the thing just rolling across turf, it's going to shake
Yeah,
anyhow.
it's gonna
That's
bounce around.
true.
Yep.
Without
Driveway,
even
not
shaking
so
it
much.
yourself, just
Those
but
are good problems to have.
less so on the driveway, more so on the lawn.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Have to, yeah. So there's obstacle avoidance and
Excuse me.
Yeah, there's a lot more to this than just picking up the monkey balls.
Oh yeah,
oh yeah.
yeah. It's fairly complicated once you get into it.
Yep. All right. Any other ideas or comments?
That's good.
Okay. All right. We got a couple of new people. Nick's here. Jim Held. Hello, Jim. A name I don't recognize. Are you first timer? You're muted, by the way. I guess he's just lurking. All right, so I have a presentation tonight on sleep modes for ESP32s. This was all right. Who changed my screen? I didn't do that. Did I? Must be too many people. Maybe I did. Yeah, so my pickleball score machine from problem of the month, I think it was back in November. I want to run an ESP32 on some batteries, and so I'm looking at low power consumption.
You're not displaying the screen yet, are you?
I'm working on it right now, Carl.
Oh, okay.
All right. Does anybody see that?
Yep,
Yep.
we see it.
Yeah, that works.
Great. So I have used ESP8266s and put them into deep sleep. One of the ESP32 allows you to use multiple GPIO pins to wake from deep sleep, and that's not supported in the 8266. So here's a block diagram I copied out of one of the data sheets. There's a bunch of units, the Wi-Fi stuff, one or more cores of different types of processors. It also has this RTC, which usually stands for real-time clock. I'm not 100% sure that's what it stands for in theirs, but it's a small area of the chip that can remain active when you're in deep sleep. And
Excuse me.
some of the GPIO pins come into this section. And so, one of the things I want to do is go to sleep, wait for somebody to press one of a couple of buttons, have it wake up, look at what the state of all those buttons are so I can figure out which button got pressed, and wake up and do something.
Are you able to do that on a timer?
I don't want to do it on a timer, right? Because I don't know how long. I can't, with a timer, you can't wake up when the button is pressed because you don't know what time the button's going to be pressed.
Mhm.
With the on the 8266, you can sleep forever. You can deep sleep forever and wake up when the reset button is pushed. So one button,
Hmm.
one, yeah. With the, or you can, so the timer is it's a 32-bit value, and so you get, and it's in microseconds, and so you get a couple of hours is the longest that you can sleep. So if you want to sleep for a day, you have to wake up every couple hours and increment a counter, and then when you've counted enough, you know that it's been a day. With the ESP32 allows a 64-bit value in microseconds again, which is enough to sleep for, I think it's 292,000 years.
Okay, so that's nice.
So that's long enough.
Mhm. Yeah, right.
I was wondering, maybe it isn't.
Well, I don't know. You're a lot of things are going to have to live awfully long to get it to work that long, right? So here's a list of the different power modes. When you're active, power is supplied to all the different power domains on the chip. There's something called modem sleep, which turns off the radio. So I don't know if that's just the transmitter. I haven't looked much at modem sleep, but your Wi-Fi access point is periodically sending out stuff, and clients that are hooked up to it have to reply or something, and so they have this mode where it spends as much time as it can with the radios off, but wakes up and does the minimal amount to keep you logged on. Then the next level is light sleep, and that turns off the clock to the CPU. So your program counter and all that are no longer running. The I/O pins are still active, and that saves you some power. And then the deep sleep, a whole bunch of stuff gets turned off. The PMU down in that RTC and the ULP ultra low processor. There's some configuration that you can set up for what gets turned off and what gets turned on. And that uses a very small amount of power.
So I have a question.
Sure.
During sleep, are interrupts looked at? In other words, if you press a button that causes an interrupt, can you have that interrupt take you out of sleep? But that all depends on whether or not the interrupt is even acknowledged.
Right. So the normal interrupt handling stuff is not working because the CPU is not, it's not executing instructions, so it can't be vectored off to interrupt service routine.
Right, that's true.
But you can configure that pin so that these other processors watch it and wake up the CPU. Yeah, so here are the power levels. You know, when you're running a normal chip, you're 20 to 40 milliamps. This is with the radio off. When you're talking on the radio, it can be 300 milliamps. If you go to sleep, light sleep gets you down around 1 milliamp, and deep sleep gets you around a tenth of a milliamp or a hundredth of a milliamp.
10 microamps.
Yep. And so is this chart, what are the different sources of being able to be awakened? And so GPIO pins, right? Those work in light sleep and deep sleep. The timer interrupt works in light sleep and deep sleep. You can wake up from light sleep by activity on the Wi-Fi or serial port characters coming in or Bluetooth activity. And then the one at the bottom, so when you're running slow and low power, there are a selection of clocks that you can be running on. Some are internal to the chip. This Crystal 32K is an external crystal that you can bring into the chip. And if you're running on that clock and the clock stops for some reason, that will wake you up. I didn't try doing that, but so I'm mostly interested in deep sleep. And so there are example sketches, timer wake up. And so this is sleep for n microseconds and then wake up. There are variables. So the normal variables that you have within your sketch, when you power down the CPU and the RAM and all that stuff, they just kind of go away. There is this. Oh shoot! I didn't make that previous. This RTC data attribute that tells the compiler to place this variable into RTC memory, which does retain power while you're in deep sleep. And so this boot count variable, it gets initialized to 0 when the program starts, when the chip boots. But when you wake up from deep sleep, it's smart enough to know that it was a deep sleep reboot, and it does not reinitialize it to 0. And so you can keep a counter of how many times you wake up. And so this is a portion of the example sketch. I've pulled out, I've removed all the comments and the serial prints and whatnots to get it to fit on one slide. But it's really just these two calls. One that says, okay, I'm going to use the timer as the wake up source for my sleep, and then I'm going to go to sleep. When I first started using deep sleep on ESP8266, I was surprised that we lost the program counter. And, if there was a statement after this, I would have expected it to continue execution where it went to sleep. And but that's not how deep sleep works. Deep sleep starts back like similar to a reboot, and your setup gets called again. And so loop for this program never gets called, because you go to sleep here, and when you wake up, you start back over at setup. So here is some of the serial output. The ESP82, the ESP32s print out some stuff when they boot. And one of the things they have is this reset reason. And so this is a power on reset, the original powering of the chip. And this is the one in which that boot counter gets initialized to 0. And so the sketch prints out, it increments the boot counter and prints it out. And it tells you that it was not caused by a deep sleep. And it says, okay, I'm going to go to sleep now. 5 seconds later, it reboots. It knows that it's a deep sleep reset, so it doesn't initialize that boot count back to 0. And so it gets incremented, and it knows, so your code knows that it was woke up from deep sleep, and the wake up was caused by a timer. So, one of the things I'm interested in is the current consumption. And so I hooked up a little I2C current monitoring chip on the 5-volt supply of the USB cable feeding the chip. And I ran a couple different tests. The brown one was the first one I did, and so the current monitoring sketch waits for the current to spike, and then it collects and outputs data. And when it gets down below, I think my threshold is 20 milliamps, it runs for a little bit more and then shuts off. And so to the far right here, this is when the chip is in sleep, deep sleep. And it's using, these 3 different runs were 1.7 milliamps, 10 milliamps, and 17 milliamps. These numbers are a far, far cry from 10 microamps. And we'll talk about why in a second. The other curious thing is that the brown and the gray lines are the same chip running the same sketch, just data collected at different times. And I don't know why.
It's an order of magnitude higher.
It's
on
huge.
The gray.
Yeah, and I don't know why. I saw that when I was first running things, and I couldn't repro it. After it runs a little while, everything is in the 17 milliamp range. And I said, well, I must have misread that 1.7 or something. But I got it to repro again today, and so I don't know why. Sometimes it's low and sometimes it's high. But there are a lot of other things here that are using current. So for example, there is a LED on the power supply that turns on when you apply power to the chip. So that LED is constantly consuming power. There is a voltage regulator, and down converts it to 3.3 volts to run the processor.